367 people have been shot by police this year. Why don't we care anymore? So far this year, 367 people have been fatally shot by police in America. This time last year, it was 366. It is also just as true this year that black people remain disproportionately affected by police violence and that a disturbing number 1 in 5 of police killings involve mental illness. But ask anyone involved with the movement to end police violence and they will confirm, while cops in America remain deadly as ever, the momentum behind the movement has slowed. Instead, mass protests in 2017 are largely aimed at the Trump presidency, and for many of the protest goers, it's their first time out on the streets. The national silence on police violence was briefly interrupted recently when Jordan Edwards, a 15-year-old Texan, was gunned down while unarmed in a Dallas suburb. Edwards, a high-achieving high school freshman with a winning smile, was leaving a house party that elicited a noise complaint from neighbors when police showed up. He was driving away in a car with his brother and some friends when Officer Roy Oliver of the Balch Springs Police Department shot into the vehicle with a rifle, lethally wounding Edwards with a bullet to the head. After the fact, the Balch Springs police chief would admit that he misspoke when initially claiming that the vehicle was aggressively approaching the officers who, per the usual language, feared for their lives. But when body cam footage clearly showed the car driving away from officers and not towards them, the chief changed his position and Oliver was fired. Oliver is now facing a civil suit brought by Edwards's family. Jordan Edwards' death has been the only high-profile police death in 2017. Credit, AP Images. The circumstances around Edwards's death recall the 2012 shooting of another teen named Jordan in a southern state, also gunned down while driving away unarmed in a vehicle with friends. Like Jordan Davis, the Edwards shooting prompted widespread outrage, with virtually all national media outlets reporting the story in detail. There were a number of protests, too, despite the family's request that no marches be held. But unlike Davis, who was killed in 2012 right as a budding movement was gaining steam, organizers say that the Edwards shooting was the first so far in 2017 to garner this level of attention. People think that Jordan Edwards was the first shooting this year, but that's not true. They've been killing us at the same rate as before the election, says Rahel Mekdimtika, an organizer with the Black Youth Project 100, a national group that operates as part of the larger, informal, Black Lives Matter network. Black Lives Matter, the most prominent movement fighting to end police violence, was born in the wake of the shooting of Trayvon Martin by George Zimmerman in 2012. Co-founders Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrisse Cullors originated a hashtag which spawned a movement that grew steadily, eventually becoming impossible to ignore after mass demonstrations following the Michael Brown and Eric Garner killings in 2014. We had people out on the streets for folks who didn't fit the respectability narrative. Tika has been involved with the movement since its nascency and has seen national interest peak and then fade since then. In the last year, we've seen a gradual decrease in how much attention people are willing to pay, she says. For her, the Edwards shooting echoes narratives from around the time of Trayvon Martin. There's a sense that he didn't deserve to die, the Skittles and iced tea narrative, she says, but it doesn't matter if it's a Colt 45 and a blunt, no one deserves to be killed. Organizers like Tika say this reaction is an indicator that we've regressed to needing a perfect victim to recapture the public's attention in the wake of Trump. Gradually, we built this momentum between 2012 and 2016 that countered these notions, Tika says. We had people out on the streets for folks who didn't fit the respectability narrative, people like Alton Sterling, for example, who had an extensive criminal record. And then Trump pushed us back. A lot of the work that we've done to push the narrative forward and push the public's imagination past respectability needs to be redone now. Tika points to the April shooting of Zililameshitu Iunto, a 28-year-old Ethiopian engineer in Los Angeles, as a police death that deserved wider attention but yields sparse Google results. Perusing the Washington Post's database of police killings, one can easily find a number of victims who may have made headlines in a different political climate. 17-year-old Quinnis Hayes of Portland, Oregon, who was shot and killed in February while holding a replica of a handgun. Or the unnamed, unarmed 17-year-old girl in Arizona who was shot and killed in April by Mesa police while in the car of a man wanted on several charges, including domestic assault. Samuel Siniangwe, an organizer with the Movement for Black Lives and a policy wonk who has taken on the massive task of mapping police violence and tracking legislation around policing across the U.S., attributes this change directly to the election. The media has been squarely focused on Trump, Siniangwe says. In many ways, that focus has erased the focus on preventing police violence and holding police accountable. The Trump administration have created so many crises that it has become hard to focus on any single crisis. This has meant an overall decrease in policy intended to hold police accountable. Siniangwe's data indicates that fewer bills are being introduced to that end nationwide. It's easy to imagine that the loss of momentum for the Black Lives Matter movement is exactly what this administration wanted. It was not long after the inauguration that the civil rights portion of the official White House website disappeared and the Standing Up for Our Law Enforcement Community page appeared in its stead. One thing is clear, organizers can no longer count on the federal government to intervene. Meanwhile, there's been a proliferation of Blue Lives Matter legislation and bills meant to stifle activism. Perhaps even more critically, the Department of Justice, which was tasked with overhauling a number of police departments via consent decrees under Obama, has, under Sessions, attempted to walk back any progress gained by movements to end police violence. While federal courts have rejected the Trump administration's attempts to block Baltimore's consent decree, what will happen to a similar decree in Chicago remains to be seen. What's worse, departments that have not already come under federal scrutiny know they can now act with impunity, sometimes neglecting to release information on police violence altogether. Police are now emboldened, Siniangwe says. That can impact decisions about whether or not to hold particular officers accountable and whether or not to release certain information about a shooting. One thing is clear, organizers can no longer count on the federal government to intervene. Instead, they're focusing their attention on local and state mechanisms for reform that will hold police accountable. California is a case study for these efforts. The Attorney General is empowered by the state civil code to bring the same pattern or practice investigations against police departments that the DOJ does. Movements aimed at resisting the current administration have capitalized on the infrastructure and momentum anti-police violence organizers painstakingly built over the last 5 years. But these organizers are disillusioned. Neither Siniangwe nor Tika have immediate solutions for recapturing the public's attention, but they will continue to organize for change where they can. Just because their activism is no longer as visible doesn't mean it's not happening. Just this past Mother's Day, Black Youth Project 100 was part of a national Mama's Bailout Day action, in which scores of mothers were freed from jail in time to spend the day with their children. The work continues, says Siniangwe. Note, an earlier version misstated the number of fatal police s.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Charlotte County Cop Watch with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. but my wife would love it if some, you know, if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave a, let's say, actually, yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But, you know, do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, you know, at least I can do it. You know, 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea, too, that we have is, you know, if I got, you know, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. You know, 47,000 of you so far right now. You know, $1 a day. I mean, $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.